We're recording.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll call to order the June meeting of the Binghamton Traffic Board. It is June 12th, 2025. First item of business is approval of the minutes for the March and April meetings. I did see one suggested update come in from Councilwoman Matavetsky for the April minutes, so we can hold off on approving those until our next meeting. But is there a motion to approve the March minutes?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so March is approval, due April next month. Moving on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here today to address the board? I don't think so. So we will move on to new business. Okay. The first item under new business, this is a request to make the intersection of Highland Avenue and Crary Avenue a four-way stop. Currently, it's a two-way stop with stop signs on Crary Avenue. So the applicant says that drivers stopped at Crary don't seem to realize there is no stop for drivers on Highland. She mentions past crashes at the intersection as well as the potential danger to pedestrians. I'll read a part of her application. It states Highland is a regular part of the route for many West Side walkers and runners, not to mention children heading to the area schools or residents who use the bus stops. So basically we had the MTS reviewed this request to see if the intersection met the warrants for a four-way stop under the MUTCD. The review found that while it does not meet the warrants based on the number of crashes, it may based on some other factors, based on, I believe, the characteristics and the traffic flow of the intersections. Let me see if I can read from the report here. So other factors, all-way stop control may be installed at an intersection where an engineering study indicates that all-way stop control is needed due to other factors not addressed in the other all-way stop control warrants. Such other factors may include, but are not limited to, the following. A, the need to control left turn conflicts. B, an intersection of two residential neighborhood streets, collector or through streets of similar design and operating characteristics, where all-way stop control would improve traffic operational characteristics of the intersection. Or C, where pedestrian and or bicyclist movements support the installation of all-way stop control. So the BMTS review says Crary and Highland Avenue are residential through streets of similar design and operating characteristics. Therefore, it is unlikely that an all-way stop control would negatively impact operations of the intersection. It goes on to say it may not necessarily prevent crashes, and it is up to the discretion of the city to decide to install an all-way stop under this condition. Additionally, for consistency, BMTS is recommending making the intersection of Matthews and Highland, which is another two-way stop control, converted to an all-way stop sign, given it has similar characteristics at Crary and Highland. So I think the recommendation on the table, or what we're looking at here, is it seems like the intersection of Highland and Crary meets some of the other factors for installation of a four-way stop, and that for consistency's sake, we'd be looking to add one Highland and Matthews, one intersection over. By doing that, it would basically make Highland Avenue four-way stops for the entire eastern portion of the intersection. So we would have that consistency there that BMTS is mentioning. Any thoughts or discussions, questions on this?
From the police perspective, the crash data didn't indicate that there was an excessive number of crashes. The most recent collision that occurred there, I believe the investigation determined it was failure to yield right away after stopping at the stop sign. So there's concern that excessive speed may be contributing as well. There's been a concerted effort by the police department this spring going into the summer to do extra selective enforcement in that area and other parts of the city. But I guess I look at it from the logic of, if that's the case, there may be those other contributing factors that may be of value to consider it, but we weren't necessarily pressing or pushing for the installation of that four-way at this point.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Is there going to be any additional outreach to the neighborhood or anything before the decision's made on the most impacted, or is this about what we expect in terms of information to have?
So I think this is one of the areas and intersections that we hear about quite a bit from residents. It's one of the reasons why that added enforcement that the assistant chief mentioned is kind of started in that portion of the city. I think that if the board moves to adopt this today, there's that 30-day window where feedback comes in before anything happens. And assuming we don't get, we don't hear anything in the negative, those stop signs could go up at, more quickly than if we tabled it, pushing it off another month. And then I would imagine that like we did when the stop sign went in at Woodland, we'd work with BMTS to make sure that the signage is in place there and the stop bars and all the lines are done properly. And we could do letters to the residents in the neighborhood, making sure they're aware too, that within that 30-day window, a stop sign would be coming in.
Thank you.
Sure.
I like that BMTS looked for that consistency, and I know with Woodland, that was something that people brought up is like, well, what other streets are like this, and like why us, kind of a thing. So proposing that consistency and zooming out a little bit, I appreciate that.
Okay. Chief, is this something that the traffic division, the police department would be comfortable approving the addition of the 2 stop signs and waiting to see if there's additional feedback from residents or from officers in the area as enforcement's ongoing?
So the timetable would be, it would be approved and then this feedback would be sought before, but it would definitely be installed, or you would seek this feedback prior to making a determination.
I think if we made
So-
the determination today, there is always a 30-day window before signs go up or anything that the traffic board does is enacted. So we would have that 30-day window before the decision is made. Assuming no issues arise in that period, we could put the stop signs up 30 days from the date of the meeting, basically.
Yeah, I think that would be, prudent. We get a lot of complaints about, I think mostly the excessive speed or failure to stop at stop signs. There is some issues been identified over there. I think that would probably be a better course of action than just to install. I'd be curious to hear from the people that actually live and frequent that. A lot of the travelers, I think, have diverted off of Riverside Drive, and we talked about hospital traffic and so forth. But
Okay. Anything else on this before for a motion? Okay, so I think we look for a motion then to install the 2 sets of stop signs on Highland Avenue at the intersections of Crary and Matthews, pending any additional feedback to the negative, significantly kind of swaying the decision on that prior to the July meeting. Is there a motion for the installation of those 2 sets of stop signs as outlined?
Motion.
Is there a second?
second,
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is a request to remove the no parking 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. zone on the west side of Milford Street. Tito, do you mind giving us the background on this? I was looking for the application that was sent in and I wasn't able to find it.
Yeah, on the west side of Milford Street, there is a section that is no parking from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then if I recall correctly, the opposite side of the street is no parking anytime. And that is creating an issue for some residents who are saying they don't have anywhere to park during those hours. It seems like there may have been at one time a need for that temporary no parking zone, but no one seems to know what that is, and it may not be necessary anymore.
Thank you. All right, so this is something we at DPW look at too. No concerns or issues about these changes affecting access for garbage trucks or plows, right, Josh?
I don't believe it's going to cause anything for garbage trucks. Plows in the winter, it might be a little bit of a problem, but there's already alternate side street parking, so should be okay. I might just extend out the no parking here at the corner a little bit to make sure everyone's got enough room to make the corners.
Okay. Any thoughts, questions, discussion on this? If not, I'd look for a motion to remove the no parking 8 a.m., 5 p.m. zone on the west side of Milford Street. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's approved. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, there's one correction here. So the applicant listed his residence as 66 Lincoln, but the project address or intersection it should say 63 Rotary Avenue. That is where the curb cut's being requested. The applicant states we would like to put in an apron from the street to a cement pad driveway, 9 by 18. We are putting in for our mother-in-law. She would like to keep her car there. Engineering, traffic, and planning have taken a quick look at this. There are some questions about whether what's being proposed will fit in that space. So we've reached out to the applicant to request a sketch or a site plan that shows in detail what's being proposed. The applicant, I think, sent that in last night and dropped this off this morning. So I will circulate this to those departments and the other board members. I would just ask that we would table this to the next meeting to give everyone here a chance to review. Is there a motion to table?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, last item under new business, State Street and Carey Street. This is a request for a stop sign at this intersection. The applicant states the intersection is a safety concern. They write Carey Street is a very narrow street, and for most of the street, it's a one-way. It turns into two-way traffic after the intersection with Sturgis Street. Carey Street from Sturgis Street to State Street is also very narrow and leads into a blind turn. The applicant goes on to mention close calls with accidents, speeding. They're requesting a stop sign be installed so drivers will exercise more caution when approaching the blind turn. When I spoke to Sergeant Music earlier this week, he was going to look at the accident reports for this intersection. Do you know if that came back?
They did, they reviewed, there was no accidents, at least in the last 6 months.
Okay.
And that is stated as an intersection, and it's more of a curve.
Yeah.
Those streets intersect.
Okay. So no accidents in the area in the last 6 months. Jen, I got to thinking after I talked to Sergeant Music, if this is another one that BMTS could just look at if there's anything similar to what they did for Highland, if there's any other factors that might meet the warrants. I think in the meantime, DPW is going to install speed limit signs in the area since it's next to a park. The speed limit is 15 miles per hour, I believe. So we want to make sure that's clearly posted. But otherwise, I would look for a motion to table this for the next meeting until we hear from BMTS. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That's tabled. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next section of the agenda, this is traffic board determinations. First up is a request to make the arena street exempt from alternate side parking. So background on this, multiple residents of the arena street reached out to the board to request to make the street exempt. This street is somewhat unique. There's a fairly wide island or green space that runs down the center of the street here. Residents who reached out to the board stated that that island makes alternate side parking a problem here, and many who reached out to us said that they were actually not aware that the street wasn't already exempt. So I believe we did outreach to residents on the street, and I'm looking at my notes from what Tito sent. So in total, counting those residents who reached out before and after the mailing from the traffic board, we heard from 5 households in total, all of whom were in favor of making the street exempt. Does that sound right, Tito? Okay. We also had DPW take a look at it to ensure plows and garbage trucks would be able to access if alternate side parking goes away there. Josh, I think the thought on that was that it's basically always helpful in the winter when there's alternate side parking. Drivers are moving their car in terms of clearing snow, but as long as residents are sort of aware that not moving vehicles may have an impact on how much plows are able to get along the curb line there, there's really not a concern as far as the plows getting through that street.
Correct. They thought it was exempt already, so we've been doing it. As long as everybody's tight to the one side and understand that if we don't move the cars to the other side, you're not going to get that curb to curb service that everyone likes.
Okay. All right.
I don't think I saw the actual letter that went out. Apologies if it was sent. I wasn't sure if what was discussed in the meeting and rehashed right now was presented in the letter to residents so that they make sure they understood.
Yeah, it just says the City of Binghamton Traffic Board is considering a request to exempt the entirety of the arena street from alternate side parking during the winter months. And it gives information on the meeting time and date and information on where to send comments. And we received one comment after sending out that mailer. That was it.
Thank you.
So I think the consensus, at least from the people we heard from, and certainly from those who proactively reached out to us, is to make the street exempt.
Yeah, and I did speak to one of the landlords who owns multiple properties on the street, and I was like, hey, like, do I need to get out there and go door to door? Is there a possibility that there's other perspectives on the street that we haven't heard? And he was like, no, my tenants are all gung ho for this,
For making
you
it
know,
exempt.
yeah. So the impression I got was there's more support than came in.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thank you. Yeah, so same thing with Highland Avenue and with all the other determinations. There's a 30-day window, and obviously we're not in alternate side parking season, so there will be time for additional feedback. Should any board members hear any, but it sounds like we've heard from those interested in reaching out to us. So I would look for a motion then to exempt the arena street from alternate side parking. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, last one on our agenda here for traffic board determinations, request to prohibit on-street parking on Duffy Court. So this has been on our agenda for the last several meetings. It came at the request of the city's Public Works Department and the Binghamton Police Traffic Division, part of an effort to address challenges to snow removal and refuse collection that currently exists there when vehicles are parked on the street. It's a cul-de-sac street with apartment buildings surrounding it. So we reached out to residents of the apartment complex about the proposed change, encouraged them to share their input with the board. We received 7 responses in total from individuals with their feedback. 6 of those were against the change. 1 seemed to have mixed feelings on it. The general sentiment from people that we heard from was that taking away those on-street parking spaces in front of the apartment buildings would create, I guess to say the least, of an inconvenience for residents there who using the on-street parking are able to have kind of quick and easy access right to their front doors. There is off-street parking in behind each of the buildings for residents, but several of the residents who provided feedback stated concerns that there is not enough off-street parking for for every tenant there. So we continue to discuss this with traffic and with DPW. It seems like since the general sentiment is people are against the change, we can hold off on making any changes to eliminate the on-street parking there, at least at this time, and continue to monitor it. The one thing that I think we want to look more closely at is possibly striping the street to make it a little bit more orderly and limit where people are parking, because right now they're just kind of parking all over the place on the cul-de-sac. So DPW will look to do that, working with the traffic division on what makes sense there in terms of striping. But I think right now what we're leaning towards is denying this request and just monitoring it going forward.
When you say striping, you just mean in the middle of the street. You don't mean actually drawing in the parking spaces.
That's what we'd be looking to do, is kind of
Okay.
drawing in parking spaces so people know.
Yeah, because I'm looking just at the Google image picture and they're all parking this way instead of
Yes.
this way. So conceivably, if people were parking against the curb
Yes.
and also using the parking lot in the back, there would be enough. I mean, hopefully we can actually get some numbers on that, but enough parking between that change.
Yep, it would keep the parking intact. It would hopefully prevent cars from blocking the walkways there. If we're strategic about how the lines are painted. And it wouldn't do away with the on-street parking. So that's the thought for now.
Would probably at least have it. If people are consistently parking like the image on Google Maps.
Yeah, I don't know what it would actually do. I think it varies day to day too, how people are parking there, because there are no lines. So it depends what cars are currently parked when people come in. So I don't know if there's a way to say the difference between what's happening now and what will hopefully be happening when it's striped, but that seems like one way to just make it a little bit more orderly over there. Any thoughts, discussion on this? Okay, I would then look for a motion to deny the request to prohibit on-street parking as outlined on Duffy Court. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's denied. Thank you. Okay, any other business items of discussion outside the agenda today?
Yeah. So I have a letter from the clerk's office relating to potentially putting out an additional handicap parking space out in front. There's that one spot that is not labeled for anything that people park in and don't pay a meter on currently. So conceivably that could be a handicap. Again, this is not in coordination with DPW or anyone, so there may be logistical reasons it can't, but I reached out to the clerk's office to ask about what it's like for handicapped people coming in to the clerk's office. So we have, as the clerk's office is responsible for issuing handicap placards for eligible Binghamton residents, we interface with people with disabilities more frequently than any other office in City Hall. We receive frequent feedback from residents with mobility impairments who visit our office expressing frustration and concern about the difficulty they face finding available handicap parking space nearby. Often, by the time they reach our office, it is evident that the lack of convenient parking has caused them significant physical strain and fatigue. Our office is a high traffic point for residents who require services such as vital records, licensing, and other essential documents. These services are often time sensitive and require in-person visits. As such, ensuring that all residents, particularly those with physical disabilities, can access City Hall safely and with dignity should remain a priority. Adding an additional handicap parking space would be a meaningful step in improving accessibility and showing our community that their concerns are being heard and acted upon. Thank you for your attention to this important matter, Sarah Jen Hopper, City Clerk. Those three, and I have been kind of trying to keep my eye on it, the three existing disabled spots in front tend to be filled. Because of the way it's structured with the big ramp system and stuff, even though they're disabled spots, they're not particularly convenient. So that one that's right in front of the ramp, again, I don't know if it legally can be a spot, but that would be closer to the ramps, particularly for people who actually have like a wheelchair bound. Whereas the other spots, are kind of close-ish if you're in a walker or with a cane. There's all the curb blockage and the fencing and all that. Not long after, actually, when we were doing disabled accessibility assessment for council chambers, recently we came in and there was a 90-year-old man who walked 2 blocks to get in to deal with a speeding ticket. And he was incredibly winded and definitely did not look like it was easy for him. So there's just been kind of a lot of things reiterating that if there's more we can do about accessibility, that would be great. And then the other, I guess, thing that I raised up this week or last week is that we have across the street from City Hall, we tend to have city cars that are marked City of Binghamton parking in the no parking zone. And I don't know if there's a way we can put in a loading zone or something for parks and code who tend to be coming in and out. But rather than consistently having people right in front of City Hall parking illegally for everyone who's coming in and out of City Hall to see, if we could figure out a way to make a system that works for our employees so they can be efficient and not breaking the law. Thank you.
Councilwoman, can you send me, if you have a written request from the clerk's office, can you forward that so I can?
Yeah, so yes, and I'll talk to you a little, yeah.
Okay. If there is anything in writing, I'll circulate it to traffic and everyone to take a look. And I have your email on the loading zone in front of City Hall.
It's based on a conversation that I had with someone from the traffic division. We were musing outside.
Okay.
So I don't want to take full credit for the idea, but I also don't know if they did work. They're not here today. And found that it was already not able to be done.
Okay.
I was hoping to check in with them this morning.
Sure. Yeah, we can take a look at that. Okay. Anything else? Any other items discussion? All right. If not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Is there a
Motion.
motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.